Two Worlds, One Family by Dragon Translator. Chapter 27, A Much Needed Talk. The news spread amongst the villagers long before they got the god completely back to Berk. Stoic had told them to place the treasure in his and Hiccup's house. The village crowded around the bottom of the hill, but were unable to get closer. The dragons all lay in a circle around the hut. Something Stoic had suggested to Hiccup while riding with his son on Toothless back to the village. Stoic stood beyond the circle, staring down at the tribe. Hiccup saw his father frown and knew what was coming. "Enough!" Stoic bellowed, quieting the crowd. "Hiccup and his friends found this treasure. It is theirs to do with as they please. Return to your work. Winter is right on our doorstep." The crowd grumbled, but slowly began to disperse. Hiccup frowned. Old Man Jorgensen glared at Hiccup before walking away. Spitlout followed his father, sending Snotlout a pointed look. Hiccup's frown deepened. Though his mother's father, Old Man Jorgensen had once ordered Hiccup to never refer to him as any form of kin. Even after the war ended and Hiccup awoke, the old man still did not want Hiccup to verbally address him as kin. Spitlout was Hiccup's uncle, being Valka's brother, yet never acted the part until after the Red Death and Hiccup's recovery, and then only barely. Hiccup's eyebrow lifted at seeing Snotlout glare at his father and grandfather. Hiccup watched Snotlout stomp over to Hookfang. Snotlout sat down near Hookfang's foot. Hookfang curled his neck around, shielding his rider with his head. Hiccup looked over to Astrid, who stood next to him. She smiled and nodded her head before reaching out and squeezing his hand. Hiccup curled his head, looking over his shoulder, then down at Toothless. "Please go with her," he whispered. "I need to talk to Snotlout, and he might not want others here." Sharpshot and Toothless chirped and warbled at the same time. Hiccup frowned. The cry sounded distinctly annoyed, though Hiccup was unsure how he knew that. Before Hiccup could respond, Hookfang cooed and chittered something. Sharpshot and Toothless grunted. Sharpshot hopped down, and Toothless moved to stand beside Astrid. "I needed to talk to them anyways," Astrid said, smirking at Hiccup. Why?" Astrid just winked before walking away. Hiccup chortled and followed her. Sharpshot flared his wings and flew after both of them. Hiccup stared as all three were joined by Stormfly, and all sat down beside his house. A purr from Hookfang pulled his attention. "Remind me to find out what that was about," Hiccup said. Hookfang merely snorted and lifted his head. Hiccup shook his head and ducked under Hookfang's chin. Snotlout leaned against Hookfang's leg, arms over his chest. Hookfang lowered his head. Hiccup sat down in front of Snotlout. "Why?" Snotlout asked. Hiccup's eyebrow lifted. "Why what?" "Why did you do it?" Hiccup glanced over his shoulder at Hookfang. The dragon's eyes flickered to Hiccup's left leg. Hiccup looked down, and then up at Snotlout as realization dawned. Hiccup began playing with some grass by his metal leg. He knew most would think he fought the Red Death to save the Vikings and dragons. Even if Snotlout had been a torment growing up, Hiccup knew he would have to answer honestly. If Snotlout did not want to truly know the answer, he would not have asked the questions. "2 reasons," Hiccup said softly. "One was to get Toothless back. He was my best friend, and only got caught because I tried to change my dad's mind." Hiccup paused. "What was the other reason?" Hiccup took a deep breath, looking up at his cousin. "To prove Dad wrong." Snotlout stared at Hiccup, his arms lowering. "The almighty Hiccup only wanted to prove his father wrong?" Hiccup grunted. "I'm not almighty," he said softly. "I was mad and scared, Snotlout. Dad just disowned me and was taking Toothless to his death. I wanted to get Toothless back and tell Dad he should have listened to me." "You didn't want to fight that monster?" Hiccup shook his head. "I saw that monster's head and knew we couldn't fight it head on like Dad wanted. I wanted to figure out its weaknesses and exploit them." "What changed your mind?" Hiccup stared at Snotlout. When Astrid fell. Snotlout frowned. Not when Uncle Stoic pulled you out of the water. No. I still wanted Dad to know this was all his doing, even after he pulled me out of the water. I would have told him then, but he apologized and told me he was proud to call me his son. Hiccup resumed playing with the grass. Toothless and I could have kept that monster occupied long enough for the tribe to get to the 3 ships the monster's flame didn't reach. When I saw Astrid fall, I knew that thing had to die. Hiccup looked up and his face hardened. I couldn't let Astrid die. She listened to me. She pushed me into acting after Dad took Toothless. Snotlout tilted his head, then stared at the joint that connected Hookfang's wing to his shoulder. She wasn't even family, Snotlout whispered. Hiccup frowned, but Snotlout continued before he could question what the team was going on with his comment. You went after your dragon, and it wasn't family that changed your mind. Snotlout's hands fisted. We're supposed to stand together. Mum always said that. A tribe stands as one. Division kills more warriors than an enemy's blade. Uncle Stoic said that when we were kids. Snotlout stared at Hiccup. We all ignored that with you, and the scrawniest one in the tribe showed us all up on the field of battle. Hiccup's brow furrowed. His jaw tightened. Snotlout growled and slammed a fist onto the ground. How'd things get so wrong? How did we get it all wrong?
Excuse me. Both teams looked up as Palewing flew over Hookfang's neck. She bowed to Hiccup. Forgive me for intruding, Alpha, she said, straightening and sitting down. I was looking for you, actually, and heard Snotlout's questions.
Why were you looking for me? Hiccup asked.
To let you know Mama Gida is napping as she promised.
Hiccup blew a sigh of relief. Thank you. Hiccup saw Snotlout frowning, glancing between Hiccup and Palewing. Hiccup sighed again. Gida could have died in that cave, he said. She warned us that if she used too much of her magic without resting, she would die. Snotlout's eyes widened. The barrier! Had Shadowfire not warned us, Elder Gida could have used too much magic to keep the rocks from killing us, Hookfang said, tilting his head so he could see them.
Both Mama Gida and Shadowfire would gladly give their lives up to keep all of you safe, Palewing said, as would Frost and I.
Hiccup frowned. But didn't the Elder Terror say that it was highly likely you were carrying eggs now?
Palewing tilted her head. Yes, but if you and your friends die, I wouldn't want my hatchlings to grow up in a world that would be left behind.
What do you mean? Hiccup asked.
There is peace now, Palewing said. You brought it about, Alpha. You and your friends are helping to keep it. Should you or any of them die, that peace may end. I would not want any of my hatchlings to live in such a world. If my life is payment to keep you or them alive, so that peace can remain, it is a good exchange.
But, Hiccup began, only to have Hookfang nuzzle against his back. Alpha, any dragon in the nest would give their lives to keep you safe. And those that know the other riders would give their life to keep them safe too.
Hiccup sighed. Palewing smiled and nuzzled against Hiccup. That you believe you are not worthy of this is one of the reasons the dragons know they are right to name you our Alpha. She sat back and looked at Snotlout. I know the answers to your questions, if you still wish to know.
Snotlout stared at her, then shrugged.
Palewing smiled. Mama Gida raised Frost and Shadow to weigh every action they do, because every action has consequences. Frost told me Nana was the one to teach Mama Gida's dad that, who then taught Mama Gida.
Palewing tilted her head.
Do you see, Snotlout? Things got to be so wrong, because somewhere it was taught to be right, and that teaching continued through the generations.
Hiccup jerked. The shields, he said. Hamish II was painted to look buff, but he was a Hiccup like me. Snotlout frowned. That far back?
Hiccup shrugged. Maybe even before Vikings first sailed into these waters.
Snotlout's frown deepened. Gerda said we weren't Vikings.
Huh?
She and I, we talked. She said Vikings raided other people, and we haven't since the dragons started attacking.
Hiccup turned to Palewing. The small dragon sighed. Vikings were known as inventive masters of the sea, but were also known as violent raiders that left death and destruction in their wake. Any village that had access to water of any kind lived in fear that a Viking raiding party would set their sights upon them.
Vikings did to others what dragons were ordered to do to us?
Palewing shook her head. Worse. Dragons took food and burned some dens. As far as I know, deaths only really happened when the humans fought back. History told us that Vikings burned entire villages and took humans back with them.
Hiccup's face tightened. Slaves, he said, his voice clipped.
Yes, Palewing said.
I hate slavery, Hiccup said.
Palewing cooed. That's why Mama Gida knew swearing herself to your service would work. Those in the nest that still fear her magic will rest easy knowing you can control it, Alpha. And Mama Gida knows you won't put a collar on her.
Hiccup jerked. She swore herself to me to keep some in the tribe from being scared?
Partially, Palewing said. She does respect you, Alpha, and she knows you are a worthy liege lord for her to serve. Keeping fears down is just an added bonus.
Hiccup sighed. He heard Snotlout grunt. Grandpa doesn't remember being in Gerda's cave. Snotlout said, He told me to. Snotlout paused, his fists clenching. He wants me to challenge you.
Is that why you go against everything I say?
Snotlout's face hardened. He looked away. Hiccup sighed and looked down. Do you know why he never liked me? Hiccup said, He never got over Aunt Valka. Snotlout whispered, He doesn't believe you are actually Aunt Valka's son. He thinks Dad... Hiccup trailed off. Dad still loves Mum. That's why he never remarried. Hiccup looked away. I think he believed I fell short of being her son as well. I know he believed I fell short of being his son.
Palewing cooed and then nuzzled against Hiccup. Hookfang shifted his head so he could nuzzle against Hiccup's back. Hiccup saw Snotlout watching both dragons, and braced for some comment.
Snotlout grunted. Hiccup? Snotlout began, staring at his hands. You are Uncle Stoic and Aunt Valka's son. And I'm... he grunted. Hiccup. I was wrong. Hiccup placed a hand on Snotlout's shoulder. Snotlout looked up. Hiccup sat back and held his hand out. Snotlout grinned and clasped Hiccup's hand. Hiccup grinned. Thank you, Snotlout. Want to see how Dad divided the treasure? What are you going to do with your share? Snotlout asked, standing. Hiccup felt his cheeks warm as he stood, and he cleared his throat. Dad... Dad suggested I keep it for Astrid's Munda, as we flew back to the village. Snotlout grunted. Ugh. He said, then his face hardened, and he stared at Hiccup intently. Don't hurt her. I tried to promise her father that. Mr. Overson said not to. That I should know how easy it was for well-meaning people to hurt each other. He told me to promise that I would always work things out with her. Snotlout frowned. He's right. For most of us, the tribe is well-meaning. But we still hurt you. Snotlout placed a hand on Hiccup's shoulder. Never again, though. Hiccup smiled. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that. Oh, I love that. Beautiful reconciliation, that. Gorgeous. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.